four songs that became part of the censorship movement of the 1980s, the mid to late 1980s. Let's get into it. Hey, I'm Michael Douglas. Welcome back to another episode of Dr. Pundit, where we talk about music, not medicine. And on this particular episode, I'll be talking about four songs that I think are representative in the 1980s that caused drama with advocates for censorship. And now looking back on this more than 40 years later, or 35 to 40 years later, I suppose, a lot of this seems completely unnecessary, and it's easy to see how those who led the fight were probably more concerned about their own political futures than protecting people who may be offended by lyrics. And 3 out of 4 of these songs that I'll talk about were all Billboard Hot 100 hits. Yeah, let's get into it. But before I do that, I'm Michael Douglas. This is where we talk about music, not medicine at all, okay? Music, because that's what you're here for. And if you like what you see, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. We're on a road to 500 subscribers. You know, pop songs through the years, at least in the half century or so, have bordered on provocative for the sake of charting attention or commanding attention or getting an audience. Plenty of songs through the years have been raunchy or downright erotic. I could probably do a whole show on the entire catalog of Two Live Crew, for example, but maybe that's another show. Now, some of these songs, especially around the 1980s, were the subject of pretty major censorship controversies. So let's take a look at this. First up, from 1985, the song Dress You Up by Madonna. That smash hit number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. And it was one of the top 10 singles released from her breakthrough album, Like a Virgin. Now, you would think that that song would be the subject of more controversy, and it was in its own way, but this one carried more of a overt sexualization of the female, and that's what got the ire up of censorship committees. Now, the one I'll reference this entire show was called the Parents Music Resource Center, and that's best known for the likes of Tipper Gore and other advocates who were really trying to stake out a claim in Washington for something that they could basically control and send out to the masses, that this was done for the betterment of society, for protecting children and impressionable people from the ravages of questionable lyrics in pop songs. So this committee in Washington came out with a list called the Filthy 15. As the name implies, 15 acts with the most objectionable lyrics that were problematic. Now, despite the benign lyrical content in this song, Dress You Up, the Parents Music Resource Center, the PMRC, put this song in the Filthy 15 because Madonna was pretty much an easy target for this. So without really getting into why they placed it on this song, it was the overall aura, the overall presence of Madonna as an act, her shtick, what got her basically, I think, the audience that she wanted. And so that was enough for this committee to put her on this list and to basically censor her content in such a way that her overall presence, especially, you know, with this album and the music video, their main objection was, for lack of a better word, sex. That's right, because sex. Madonna was a particular target for one member of the group, Susan Baker, who was married to then Treasury Secretary James Baker, who was an influential member of the Ronald Reagan presidential cabinet and was from the South. And, you know, do I need to go any further? Devout Christian, those things. And she was aghast when her 7-year-old daughter asked her what a virgin was, referring to Madonna's Like a Virgin. So she became the object of the PMRC in this regard. Sugar Walls by Sheena Easton. Now this track hit number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1985, and was written and produced by Alexander Nevermind, otherwise known as Prince, a Prince pseudonym. And we'll be talking about his Darling Nikki song, the one that basically took this committee into overdrive, in a few minutes. This track is from her album A Private Heaven. And this track was both a top 5 R&B hit and a top 10 pop hit that year, in spite of being day parted, which means not really played a lot during the day, I believe, on stations that wanted to censor how much it was played during the day. But after a certain period of time, say after 7 or 8 o'clock at night, this song was played on those stations. And it muscled up enough airplay and sales to hit the top 10 on both the pop and the R&B charts. Now, what landed this song into hot water was the euphemism for the female anatomy, in particular the vagina, sugar walls. This song was even enough to get Jimmy Swaggart, this guy.
I have sinned against you, my Lord.
That's right. Enough to get Jimmy Swaggart mad about it as well. Now, Jimmy Swaggart died, but this guy was as much of a showman as he was this evangelist type. So this is another person, I think, who just wanted to get on the bandwagon and increase his revenue for his televangelism. Now, while we've grown accustomed to penis metaphors, for lack of a better term, in song titles, think of the track Love Gun by Kiss, for example. A song with a vagina euphemism was shocking in some circles, and Prince's erotic lyrics in the song ensured that airplay ban, at least during the morning and mid-afternoon and daytime at a lot of US radio stations at the time. So it was the lyrical content rather than overt imagery which got this song into hot water. Now, Sheena Easton denied the song was overly sexual, and she went on to say, "It doesn't say, 'let's have intercourse,' or 'oh my, what a wonderful penis you have.' I've sung songs before and since that were sexual. Even the very first song, 'Hey, that was great,' he said. 'Wish we could stay in bed.' Sugar Walls was just another song which, without getting too hoity-toity, was an artistic interpretation of a love relationship." Now, of course, Prince was an easy target for the PMRC, and we'll talk about Darling Nikki, as I said in a minute here. But Sheena Easton, whose first American hit was the totally anodyne Morning Train 9 to 5, which I talk about in this episode on Dr. Pundit, search for it, was more surprising. You know, Sheena Easton's happy housewife persona from that song, and now she was this sex starlet in Sugar Walls. Well, it was really not indicative of her real life, but were characters she portrayed through her music. And her ability to assume her roles served her well, because pretty much during this time, she was able to land some acting roles that, gave her a little bit more exposure, most notably a recurring role on the TV show Miami Vice, and on the shows Gargoyles and All Dogs Go to Heaven. She Bop by Cyndi Lauper. Before I get into this song, you can check out my Dr. Pundit episode on this song, recorded more than 2 years ago, where I talk about its meaning of masturbation, She Bop. So you may want to check that out. Anyway, Cyndi Lauper is known for playful pop songs. She was just inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, if you can believe that. Rarely does she ever deal with controversy. However, her 1984 track She Bop from her groundbreaking debut album, She's So Unusual, ran into controversy when it was first released. Now, it's easy to see why, because it's a song about pleasuring oneself, and the PMRC, unsurprisingly, added this song to its Filthy 15 list, but it ended up hitting number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. Fun fact, Cyndi Lauper introduced this song at a Paris concert in 1987, and she said, "A bop a day keeps the doctor away. I recommend it." Cyndi Lauper wanted to know that while this song, yes, inherently had that meaning, she also said that this song could be about dancing, bopping, having a good time, and it was directed at teenagers at the time before they could figure out what the song was on their own, and that was healthy, a healthy use of a double entendre per Cyndi Lauper. And that's a pretty interesting way to think about it. Finally, that evilest of the evil songs by the Parents Music Resource Center, Darling Nikki from Prince's 1984 album Purple Rain. Now this song was never released as a single, but got limited airplay, mostly on R&B stations, heavily censored, of course, like the part about masturbating with a magazine. But it was another song that propelled this album out into the superstardom that it would eventually, to this day, still receive. Tipper Gore was the one who really led the fight against this song. And this is known as one of the songs that was most responsible and that led to the utilization of the parental advisory sticker a few years later on all CD content or all recorded content in stores from that point on. And interestingly enough, in 1991, Walmart refused to sell any albums that had this sticker on it. And this prompted many artists to release both censored and uncensored versions of their albums, of course, because, you know, music artists have to survive, right? And the story goes that this song really got Tipper enraged when she heard her 11-year-old daughter listening to this song. She became outraged, and then this whole act started basically the PMRC. Tipper was then vilified by many who supported the right to free speech and wanted no laws passing legislation that would restrict the free expression of lyrics. Artists like Frank Zappa, John Denver, Dee Snider from Twisted Sister were all on the same side, the anti-censorship side of this argument. Now, what did Prince say about this song, Darling Nikki? Well, he wrote the song for the movie Purple Rain, of course. In the film, he finds out his girlfriend, Apollonia, has taken up with his nemesis, Morris Day, who was a member of the band at the time. And so he sings this song, Darling Nikki, in a club to embarrass her in the movie. And if you watch the movie, she runs off before the performance of the song is done. In 2001, Prince became a Jehovah's Witness, and this put an end briefly to his sexually charged lyrics. And this shelved a lot of those songs for a while, but 6 years later, in 2007, he began playing this particular track again in concerts. So it's not surprising that the PMRC put this song at #1 on the Filthy 15 list. Now, when I think about all of this, it seems quaint now, but, you know, what goes around comes around. Currently, without getting too political, you know, we are in very volatile times in terms of the way people express themselves, what passes, what doesn't. And when I look back on this episode, especially in the 1980s, because I experienced it with all of these songs, of course, and liking all of these songs, that, you know, at the time I was concerned about artists not being able to express who they are in songs, and that was troubling. And while the intentions may have been warranted by a lot of people in this group, ultimately I think that they were in this mostly to provide some sort of political bona fides for their own careers and their own notoriety as well. And, you know, it's a shame that they had to put, I think, a lot of musicians through the ringer on this one when this really didn't have to happen. But I think it's a great kind of period to talk about in the history of recorded music in the late 20th century, and one that I think about from time to time, and one that was significant enough for me to bring to all of you. I'm Michael Douglas. If you like what you see here on the channel, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. And as the late Barry White always used to say, let the music play, and I'll see you on the next episode.